There's a reason why some people seem to wake up into new lives, quietly, effortlessly, while others repeat the same days no matter how hard they try. The difference isn't luck, talent, or timing. It's what happens in the invisible hours of the night. Neville Goddard revealed that every evening, just before sleep, we stand before the most sacred doorway of creation. Yet most people use that doorway to rehearse fear, regret, and lack. They pray for change by feeling the same emotions that keep them stuck. What if the miracle you've been waiting for was never about doing more, but about feeling differently for just a few silent moments before sleep? This is not superstition. It's the science of consciousness wrapped in spiritual truth. The Satis Neville Goddard method, the state akin to sleep, turns the moments before rest into the most powerful creative state a human can enter. You don't have to fight the world, chase signs, or beg the universe. You only have to feel the end as real and let the unseen handle the details. Because every night, the invisible is listening, and what you whisper to it, not in words, but in emotion, becomes the script of your tomorrow. There's a moment right before the body surrenders to sleep, when the mind stands between two worlds, the visible and the invisible. It's a thin, sacred doorway that few recognize. In that silence, imagination becomes the sculptor of reality. Neville Goddard called this the most powerful moment of creation, where your inner world writes tomorrow's script. What you assume in that stillness becomes the seed planted in the soil of the unseen. Think of night not as an ending, but as an invisible workshop. While the body rests, the mind continues shaping, molding every assumption into form. If one drifts to sleep believing nothing changes, the subconscious takes that as divine instruction. But if one surrenders with the quiet conviction of the wish fulfilled before sleep, a new pattern begins to bloom. The unseen listens to faith, spoken in silence. Many people chase new realities under the light of day, forgetting that creation begins in the dark. It's in that sacred pause, when thoughts slow and emotions soften, that the true work begins. The law of assumption night method doesn't demand action, only awareness. It whispers that what you imagine in those final moments is far more powerful than what you do in waking hours. Imagine your mind as a projector and the night as a blank screen. Whatever picture you hold before the curtain of sleep falls, whether fear, gratitude, or fulfillment, is what plays in the theater of life tomorrow. This is why Neville insisted, imagination creates reality. The screen doesn't judge the film, it simply reflects it. The Sats Neville Goddard technique, that subtle state akin to sleep, invites you to step beyond effort. It's where your conscious guard lowers and your deeper self takes command. Here, assumptions turn magnetic. The bridge between seen and unseen strengthens, and what felt distant begins to draw near. It's less about forcing outcomes, more about allowing them. Think about how a seed works. It's small, silent, invisible under soil, yet within it lives the blueprint of a forest. In the same way, your nightly assumptions seem small, even forgotten by morning, but the subconscious remembers. It nurtures them beneath awareness, until one day they break through as experiences, coincidences, and luck. So tonight, when you lie down, don't let your mind wander aimlessly through worries. Guard that sacred doorway as you would your most valuable treasure. Whisper into it your chosen reality, not your fears. Picture yourself already there, already at peace, already in possession of what you once desired. The night listens more deeply than you think. Some have said they've felt a sudden calm after doing this, as if life itself exhaled with them. They sleep lighter, dream clearer, and wake with quiet certainty. That's not coincidence, that's alignment. The sleep manifestation Neville process isn't mystical superstition. It's psychological truth wrapped in spiritual awareness. The state you assume at night directs your days. Even science agrees. The subconscious is most receptive in that drowsy borderland between wakefulness and sleep. It's a programmable moment, like saving a new file over an old one. The difference is what you save becomes your next chapter. To ignore this moment is to hand over authorship to yesterday's emotions. So tonight, before your eyes close, remember, you're standing before a sacred altar, the altar of imagination. What you place upon it, gratitude or grief, faith or fear, becomes tomorrow's offering. The Neville Goddard night technique is not about magic, it's about responsibility. What you assume before sleep becomes the life you awaken to, and that realization leads directly to what Neville revealed next. Neville Goddard used to say that the subconscious is faithful beyond measure. It never argues, never doubts, and never forgets. Whatever impression you leave upon it as you drift to sleep, it accepts as truth. That's why the SAT's Neville Goddard method is so powerful. Your final imaginal act before sleep isn't just a daydream. It's a command whispered into the creative depths of your being. Think about it like this. If your last thoughts at night are filled with worry, your subconscious receives that as a blueprint. It then works tirelessly to reproduce more of that emotional climate. But if your final inner picture is of peace, abundance, or love, if you feel the wish fulfilled before sleep, the subconscious begins to reorganize circumstances to mirror that feeling. It's obedient but not selective. It simply reflects what you impress upon it. Neville often compared the mind to a fertile garden. Conscious thought is the gardener, and the subconscious is the soil. Every night you sow seeds. Some plant doubt, others faith. The soil doesn't judge, it yields what it's given. That's why he insisted on sleeping in the feeling of the wish fulfilled, because the law of assumption night method operates beyond logic, it operates by belief. Many misunderstand this law, thinking they must visualize all night or repeat affirmations endlessly. But it's much simpler. The key is the emotional signature you carry into sleep. That quiet conviction, it is done, is what the subconscious accepts as fact. In that surrender, imagination creates reality Neville style, through natural, effortless faith rather than struggle. You've probably noticed how some mornings feel lighter, as if life smiles at you for no reason. That's often the echo of the state you fell asleep in. If you ended your night in gratitude, your morning mirrors that energy. Creation isn't something that begins when you wake up. It continues seamlessly from your last conscious state. You sleep into creation. Neville explained that when the body rests, consciousness doesn't stop. It simply moves inward. It dwells in the unseen workshop, shaping forms and weaving patterns from your assumptions. In that realm, there's no effort, no distance, no time delay. The moment the subconscious accepts an imaginal act as real, the unseen begins to respond instantly. Imagine this like pressing save on a file right before shutting down your computer. Whatever state you're in when you power off becomes the program that runs silently in the background. The subconscious doesn't ask if it's true, it just runs the code. That's why sleeping in faith rather than fear changes the trajectory of your days. A person who practices the sleep manifestation, Neville method nightly, begins to notice gentle shifts. People respond differently, doors open effortlessly, synchronicities multiply. These are not random. They're the visible outcomes of invisible assumptions. The subconscious simply honors what it was told to believe. This understanding frees you from anxiety about how things will happen. Your task isn't to figure it out, it's to assume the end and rest. When you trust that the subconscious has accepted your final imaginal act as fact, life itself starts to obey. The invisible becomes visible through a bridge of incidents, perfectly timed and often surprising. So tonight, when you lie down, ask yourself, what state do I want to carry into creation? Let that be your final thought, your inner lullaby. The subconscious listens more intently than any teacher, and it never forgets what it hears in the quiet of night. Soon you'll see why the next mistake most people make before sleep stops their miracles before they begin. Most people go to bed thinking they're resting, but they're actually rehearsing. They replay every awkward moment, every worry, every unfinished task. Without realizing it, they're running mental reruns of a show they don't even like. Neville Goddard warned that this habit is one of the greatest obstacles to transformation. The subconscious takes those nightly rehearsals as orders to repeat the same life tomorrow. Think about it. How many times have you laid there, replaying a conversation you wish had gone differently? That loop doesn't dissolve when you sleep. It embeds. The law of assumption is mercilessly fair. It gives you what you assume, not what you wish for. By falling asleep in regret or anxiety, you assume those feelings are part of who you are, and the subconscious faithfully reproduces them. Neville used to say, change your conception of yourself and you will automatically change the world in which you live. But that change can't happen if, every night, you reinforce the old conception. The mind before sleep is like wet cement. Impressions may then harden by morning. Every replayed worry becomes another layer of the same old structure. It's a bit like watering weeds. You may want a garden of roses, but if you keep focusing on what went wrong, the weeds flourish. The subconscious doesn't discriminate. It nurtures whatever seeds you give it. The SAT's Neville Goddard method invites you to stop replaying yesterday's failures and instead imagine the satisfaction of your prayer already answered. Some say, I can't help thinking about what happened. but you can, not by fighting thoughts but by redirecting them. Imagine changing the channel on a radio. Simply tune into a new frequency. Replace the replay of fear with a quiet scene that implies peace or success. The imagination creates reality. Neville principle works even in the smallest moments. This shift doesn't mean pretending the day didn't happen. It means choosing not to let it define the night. You can acknowledge your day, thank it for its lessons, and release it. Then consciously assume a better story. The subconscious responds not to your memory of events, but to the emotional meaning you attach to them before you drift into sleep. Try this. Before closing your eyes, forgive yourself for the day. Whisper, "I did my best." Then imagine one small scene that implies tomorrow begins differently. Feel relief as though a heavy weight has been lifted. That single act changes the energy of your sleep and, by extension, the tone of your next morning. Neville's students often discovered that when they stopped replaying the past, life began to rewrite itself. People apologized, money appeared, relationships healed. It wasn't magic, it was alignment. They stopped commanding the subconscious to repeat the old and started instructing it to build the new. You see, drifting into sleep rehearsing fear is like programming a nightmare to unfold in daylight. But drifting into sleep rehearsing faith is programming a miracle. Every thought is a seed, every emotion a command. The sleep manifestation Neville method turns bedtime into a daily rehearsal of fulfillment instead of failure. So, as your head touches the pillow tonight, notice what story you're telling yourself. Is it the one you want to live again tomorrow? If not, change the narrative. The subconscious has no defense against a well-felt assumption. And when you begin to use that sacred window intentionally, you'll understand why Neville called his night technique the simplest yet most life-changing practice of all. Neville Goddard always emphasized simplicity. He said the secret night technique isn't complicated. It's about feeling. All you need to do is enter a relaxed, drowsy state and imagine a brief scene that would naturally take place if your wish were already fulfilled. Not a movie, not a marathon of effort, just a moment that implies completion. The simpler, the better. The key is the state between wake and sleep, what Neville called SATS, state akin to sleep. It's that gentle borderland where the conscious mind softens and the subconscious becomes receptive. In that stillness, imagination is no longer fantasy. It's the language of creation. Whatever you impress there, the unseen takes as fact. For example, instead of imagining every detail of a new life, picture yourself hearing a friend say, "I'm so happy for you." Feel the warmth of that compliment. Sense the satisfaction rising from within. That single moment implies the entire story has already unfolded. The wish fulfilled before sleep doesn't need explanation, just conviction. Neville explained that this technique mirrors how a seed works. The power is not in its size, but in its potential. Likewise, your imaginal scene doesn't need to be grand. It just needs to feel alive. One simple act, a handshake, a hug, a phone call received, can carry the full implication of your fulfilled desire. It's important not to strain. If you find yourself forcing the image, pause. Take a breath. Feel the weight of your body sinking into the bed. Let the muscles relax, the breath slow. Then, when the scene returns naturally, step into it quietly. The law of assumption night method operates best when effort dissolves into ease. Remember, this isn't visualization for its own sake. It's identification. You're not pretending, you're being. The mind must be trained to think from the wish fulfilled, not of it. That shift, from observer to participant, is where imagination creates reality Neville style. You're not watching the scene, you're in it, living it. Some people worry they can't see images clearly. Neville reassured them, clarity doesn't matter, feeling does. Even a vague sense of satisfaction, a faint emotional glow impresses the subconscious. It's not about perfect pictures, it's about authentic emotion. The unseen understands feeling, not form. The best time to practice this is when the body naturally relaxes, just before sleep. That's when your inner and outer worlds blur. The conscious mind, like a tired guard, lowers its defenses, and the deeper self steps forward. It's in that moment the sleep manifestation Neville process begins to work. When done right, the experience feels serene. There's no rush, no trying, only the quiet knowing that what you're imagining is already true. The body sleeps, but the spirit awakens to its creative power. This is why Neville called imagination the gateway between heaven and earth. It bridges what is seen and what is unseen. And as you rest in that feeling, your inner world becomes a living prophecy. You've impressed the unseen with a clear image of faith, not wishful thinking. What happens next will unfold through ways you couldn't plan. The night becomes your co-creator, gently weaving the threads of your assumption into form. And the next step is where the true magic begins, learning to feel it as if it's already real. This is where Neville's teaching moves from theory to living truth. You must feel it as real. The imagination alone isn't enough. It's the emotion that gives it life. When he said feeling is the secret, he meant that creation begins the moment you emotionally accept something as already done. In that quiet space before sleep, the feeling becomes the bridge between desire and manifestation. So instead of thinking, "One day I'll have it," you rest in the awareness, "It's already mine." That subtle shift changes everything. The subconscious cannot tell the difference between what's vividly felt and what's physically experienced. To it, emotion is fact. That's why the wish fulfilled before sleep becomes such a powerful act. It tells the universe, "This is who I am now." Neville Goddard often said that desire is not something to suppress, it's divine direction, but desire must be completed in imagination, not left open-ended in longing. When you feel as though your wish is already complete, the longing dissolves into peace. You're no longer chasing the dream, you're resting in it. That emotional rest is the true signal of faith. Imagine wrapping yourself in the feeling of relief, that gentle exhale that comes after something finally works out. Let that emotion fill the body. Gratitude naturally follows, not because you hope it's coming, but because you know it's done. This is the essence of the law of assumption night method, feeling from fulfillment, not toward it. Some find it helpful to recall real memories of joy or relief, then merge them with their new assumption. For example, the same warmth you felt when hearing good news once, transfer it now to your current desire. The body doesn't know the difference. This emotional transference is how imagination creates reality, Neville style. The inner feeling becomes the outer form. As the feeling deepens, thoughts begin to quiet. The mind surrenders its need to analyze, and the body relaxes in agreement. You may even smile, not because something might happen, but because it already has, within you. This peace is not passive, it's magnetic. The unseen world moves in harmony with the emotional tone you fall asleep in. Think of emotion as the perfume of your assumption. It lingers long after the scene fades. Even if you forget what you visualized, the feeling remains, continuing to instruct the subconscious. So when Neville said, "Feel it real," he wasn't asking for effort, he was asking for surrender. Feel as though the prayer has already been answered, and rest there. If doubts arise, don't fight them. Gently return to the feeling of completion. Whisper to yourself, "It's already done." Let that truth settle deeper than words. Faith isn't about suppressing uncertainty, it's about choosing which feeling you trust more, fear or fulfillment. The night amplifies whichever you fall asleep in. Many who practice the sleep manifestation Neville technique describe waking with a sense of calm confidence, even before anything changes. That's the first proof, the shift in vibration. Outer confirmation follows naturally, but inner peace comes first. It's the soul's way of saying, creation has begun. So tonight, as you rest, let the emotion of relief wrap around you like a warm blanket. Let gratitude hum softly in your chest. Feel joy without reason, because that's how the unseen knows you've accepted it as real. And once that feeling carries you into sleep, the work is no longer yours. It belongs to the unseen power that always answers faith. One of Neville Goddard's most profound teachings was this: creation isn't about control, it's about surrender. As you drift towards sleep, you don't have to make anything happen. You simply let the feeling of fulfillment carry you. The Neville Goddard night technique works because the subconscious takes over where effort ends. The unseen world responds to inner conviction, not to strain. People often think they must keep visualizing or hold the image perfectly, but that's the conscious mind trying to stay in charge. Neville taught that once you've impressed the feeling, your work is done. The law of assumption is self-operating. You don't need to check if the seed is growing, you just trust that it is. Faith is quiet confidence, not anxious repetition. Think about planting a seed. After placing it in the soil, you don't dig it up every morning to see if it's sprouting. You water it, trust the process, and let nature handle the invisible work. It's the same with the sleep manifestation Neville practice. The feeling you fall asleep in is the watering. The rest happens beneath awareness. Neville said the subconscious is the womb of creation. Once it's impregnated with your assumption, the manifestation becomes inevitable. It's not a matter of if, only when. That's why control is unnecessary. The unseen works with perfect timing, guided by the vibration you've already accepted as true. As you drift into sleep, notice how effort dissolves naturally. Muscles relax, breathing slows, the mind softens. That physical surrender mirrors the spiritual one. You can't force sleep and you can't force manifestation. Both happen when you let go. The feeling, not the willpower, does the work. Some people fall into the trap of doubting the next day. Did I do it right? Was I focused enough? But that very questioning signals disbelief. The imagination creates reality. Neville principle demands trust. Once you've felt it real, stop asking. Let the subconscious deliver in its own language of synchronicity and timing. Surrender isn't weakness, it's alignment. It's stepping aside so the higher intelligence within you can operate freely. When you release control, the emotional energy you've generated flows unobstructed into the unseen. That's when coincidences, unexpected calls or sudden ideas begin to appear, the bridge of incidents forming quietly in your favor. Think of the night as a current. The more you fight it, the more exhausted you become. But if you relax and float, it carries you effortlessly downstream. That current is your assumption. It knows where to go. Trust it. The law of assumption night method is navigation through surrender, not resistance. Neville would often close his lectures saying, "Dare to assume it and rest in that assumption." That's the entire art. Daring to let the unseen complete what your mind began. The feeling of fulfillment is like a letter you've mailed. Opening the mailbox again and again doesn't speed its arrival. Let go. So tonight, as your eyelids grow heavy, stop trying to make the scene perfect. Stop analyzing whether you're doing it right. Just feel it, even faintly, and release. Let the body fall into sleep knowing the feeling itself is enough. Because in that surrender, the unseen begins its work, quietly, faithfully, and with precision that only divine imagination can achieve. When morning comes, the greatest temptation is to look for proof. You open your eyes and instantly scan your world for signs. An email, a message, a miracle. But Neville Goddard warned that doing so interrupts the process. The law of assumption doesn't need supervision. The moment you check for evidence, you're silently saying, "I don't believe it's already done." Faith looks forward, not sideways. Creation isn't like tracking a package. You don't need updates to know it's moving. Once you've impressed the subconscious, the bridge of incidents begins to form. People, circumstances, and ideas will start aligning in ways the conscious mind could never orchestrate. Your only job is to stay faithful to the inner state you fell asleep in. Imagine sending a letter to a dear friend. You trust it will reach them. You don't chase the mail truck or call the post office every hour. The Neville Goddard night technique works the same way. Once sent, your assumption travels through invisible channels. The universe delivers through perfect timing and natural sequence. Neville called this unfolding the bridge of incidents. It's the invisible choreography of life rearranging itself to reflect your inner conviction. Sometimes it's immediate, other times gradual, but it's always precise. The events that follow aren't random. They're steps leading from assumption to fulfillment. Here's where many people lose momentum. They wake up feeling good, then notice nothing's changed and immediately revert to doubt. That single thought uproots the seed planted overnight. Faith isn't measured by how quickly something appears, but by how calmly you can wait without worry. Trust that the unseen has heard you. The SAT's Neville Goddard state imprints the subconscious deeply because it bypasses resistance. But when you wake and question it, you reintroduce that resistance. The bridge can't form under constant inspection. Let it unfold like dawn, quietly, naturally, without forcing the sun to rise faster. Many students shared stories of random coincidences that led to exact results they'd imagined. A missed train led to meeting the right person. A delayed payment opened a better opportunity. That's the bridge at work, a divine logic that only hindsight can explain. The conscious mind calls it luck. The awakened mind calls it law. So instead of checking for signs, check your state. Are you still living from the end or waiting for it? The former keeps the bridge clear. The latter clogs it with doubt. You don't need evidence to feel peace. In fact, peace is the first evidence that your assumption has taken root. Neville reminded us, you do not make it real by seeing it. You see it because you have made it real. The unseen rearranges reality through your conviction, not your observation. Stop digging up your seed. The bridge is building even now, connecting the world of imagination to the world of matter. So when you awaken tomorrow, don't ask, "Is it here yet?" Instead, whisper, "It's unfolding perfectly." Then go about your day as if the miracle already happened. That quiet confidence keeps the current flowing. Soon you'll recognize the subtle signs, not because you searched for them, but because they found you. And that's when you begin to notice the first gentle proofs that the technique is working. One of the first indicators that the Neville Goddard night technique is working appears quietly in your dreams. As your subconscious begins to accept the new assumption, it starts rehearsing it symbolically through vivid imagery. You might dream of already living your wish fulfilled or see familiar faces congratulating you. These aren't random. They're reflections of an inner shift beginning to surface. Some students of Neville describe dreams so real they woke up smiling, feeling as though they'd truly experienced what they imagined. That's a beautiful sign. It means the subconscious has accepted your imaginal act as fact. Remember, the law of assumption doesn't wait for external evidence. It begins within, through these emotional confirmations. Another sign is the sense of peace that greets you in the morning. You wake up without the usual rush of anxiety or doubt. There's a subtle calm, as though something deep inside already knows everything is unfolding perfectly. That peace is the manifestation beginning to take root, the emotional equivalent of dawn before daylight. You may also notice synchronicities, small but meaningful coincidences that mirror your imaginal act. A song lyric that echoes your new belief, a stranger mentioning the very thing you visualized, an unexpected opportunity aligned with your desire. These are glimpses of the bridge of incidents quietly taking form. It's important not to overanalyze these signs. If you chase them, they vanish like smoke. Simply acknowledge them with gratitude and continue in faith. Neville said, "Persist in the assumption that your desire is already fulfilled." The signs are confirmations, not instructions. Their purpose is to reassure, not to redirect. Sometimes, the first visible change isn't the final outcome. It's your reaction to life. You respond differently to things that used to bother you. That shift in attitude is proof that the imagination creates reality. Neville principle has begun rewriting your internal script. The outer world simply follows your inner tone. You might even find yourself saying things like, "I don't know why, but I feel it's coming." That intuitive certainty is not optimism, it's alignment. The sleep manifestation Neville process turns belief into a quiet knowing. You stop chasing signs because you become one. Your very energy begins to mirror your fulfilled desire. Occasionally, the bridge unfolds through seeming delays or challenges. Don't mistake those as failure. They're adjustments, life rearranging itself to match your new state. Neville often reminded his students that the bridge of incidents might include detours, but every step leads precisely where your faith directed it. The more consistently you fall asleep in the feeling of fulfillment, the more natural it becomes. You start noticing that manifestations no longer feel miraculous, they feel normal. That's how you know the assumption has become your new baseline. What once felt like effort now feels like truth. So if lately your nights are calmer, your mornings softer, and your days sprinkled with little winks from the universe, know this: the unseen is listening. The law of assumption night method has taken root. Don't break the rhythm. Keep watering it nightly with faith, because soon those signs will solidify into undeniable reality, and that's when your practice transforms into embodiment. There's a point in this journey where the Neville Goddard night technique stops feeling like a practice and starts feeling like breathing. Each night becomes a sacred rhythm, a conversation between you and the unseen. Falling asleep, in the end, becomes natural, like returning home. You no longer try to believe, you simply know. That's when imagination and faith merge into one seamless state. Neville called this living from the end. It's not about pretending, it's about being. When you consistently fall asleep as the version of yourself who already possesses the wish fulfilled, that identity becomes your default vibration. The law of assumption reshapes your self-concept quietly, night after night, until it becomes effortless. At first, this rhythm might require conscious attention. You'll remind yourself to feel it real, to stay in the wish fulfilled before sleep. But soon, it becomes automatic. The subconscious begins to crave that peaceful state, preferring it over anxiety. Like a song your soul never forgets, faith starts playing in the background of every night's rest. This is embodiment, when your outer actions and inner beliefs no longer contradict each other. You begin to walk, speak, and think as though your desire were already true. Even without realizing it, you carry that conviction into your days. The bridge of incidents flows more easily because there's no inner resistance left. Neville said, "Faith is loyalty to the unseen reality. That loyalty deepens through repetition. Each night you return to the altar of sleep and choose to feel from fulfillment, you prove your faith." The subconscious, ever obedient, records this consistency and starts reshaping everything to match it. That's how the invisible becomes inevitable. Many who reach this stage describe a subtle joy that follows them throughout the day. It's not loud or euphoric, it's calm and grounded. That's the sign of embodiment. The sleep manifestation Neville process has rewritten their inner script so deeply that gratitude becomes their natural state. The miracle is no longer the manifestation, it's the peace. Over time, this nightly rhythm becomes a sanctuary. The moment your head touches the pillow, your spirit sighs in recognition. Here, I create. The world outside may still be catching up, but inside the transformation is complete. You fall asleep not seeking signs, but resting in certainty. Even challenges lose their grip. You begin to see them as part of the unfolding, not as obstacles. That's when the imagination creates reality. Neville principle becomes lived wisdom. You stop needing evidence because you are the evidence, a living reflection of faith realized. This deep embodiment also refines your desires. You stop asking from lack and start assuming from love. The more you practice, the more you realize it was never about getting things, but about remembering who you are, the one who creates through feeling. The night becomes your daily return to that truth. So, as this rhythm strengthens, you no longer wonder if it works. You know. Night after night, imagination and faith meet in the sacred stillness before sleep, and creation flows effortlessly from that union. And as this embodiment settles into your being, something even deeper awakens, the realization that the night itself is holy, a living altar of creation waiting for your next prayer. Neville Goddard often said that prayer is not begging, it's thanksgiving. The Neville Goddard night technique transforms your bed into an altar, your pillow into sacred ground. Every night you stand before the unseen with a choice, to rehearse worry or to rest in fulfillment. Those who understand this power approach sleep not as escape, but as communion. The law of assumption night method isn't about asking for what you want. It's about assuming it's already yours and thanking the unseen for its perfection. Gratitude is the incense that rises from this altar. When you enter sleep as though your prayer is answered, you activate the most natural law of creation, faith made flesh through feeling. Think of night as a silent temple. In that stillness, imagination becomes your prayer, and the feeling of completion becomes your worship. You don't need candles or rituals. The emotion itself is sacred enough. The unseen world listens not to your words, but to your vibration, the quiet assurance that says, "It is done." Every night offers redemption. No matter how the day went, the moment you lie down, you can rewrite the script. The sleep manifestation Neville practice gives you a new beginning daily. The past dissolves in the stillness of faith, and the future reshapes itself to match your current assumption. The altar of night wipes the slate clean. Neville said, "Change your conception of yourself, and you will automatically change the world in which you live." Nighttime is when that change takes root. Enter sleep not as the one who is seeking, but as the one who has found. That identity, the I am in fulfillment, becomes your living prayer. To use the night wisely is to understand that the unseen is always listening. When you drift to sleep in worry, you're praying for more of it. When you drift in peace, you're praying for its continuation. Prayer never stops, it only changes tone. So choose your nightly tone as deliberately as you would choose the words of a sacred hymn. The imagination creates reality. Neville principle turns every night into a divine appointment. You're not waiting for heaven to intervene. You're communing with heaven within. The same creative force that shaped galaxies listens to your assumptions. It doesn't judge, it mirrors. When you finally understand this, bedtime becomes your most important spiritual practice. You start looking forward to that sacred silence, to the moment you can feel it done and release it. The outer world becomes secondary. The inner world, alive and luminous, becomes your true reality. Those who live this way begin to see miracles everywhere. They notice divine timing, soft guidance, effortless blessings. Life begins to feel like a continuation of that nightly communion. What once seemed invisible now reveals itself in perfect order, a dance between faith and form. So tonight, before closing your eyes, treat the moment as holy. Enter sleep as though you've already been heard, because you have. The unseen world waits, eager to serve the image you impress upon it. Let your final thought be gratitude, your final feeling fulfillment. And as you surrender to rest, know this: the altar of night opens only for those who dare to believe the prayer is already answered. Tonight, when you close your eyes, remember, the night isn't just for rest, it's for rebirth. You are never simply falling asleep. You are giving form to the unseen. Every emotion, every thought, every assumption whispered before dreams becomes tomorrow's reflection. So ask yourself, what story will you choose to tell the invisible tonight? Will you drift off rehearsing fears, or will you dare to feel the wish fulfilled? Will you let the world decide who you are, or will you choose to live in the end and watch the world adjust to you? You don't need to force results or search for signs. You only need to feel, fully, honestly, faithfully. The Neville Goddard night technique works not through effort, but through surrender. It begins the moment you decide that imagination is not pretend, it's power. Fall asleep tonight as though your prayer is already answered. Let gratitude be your lullaby and faith your blanket. Because when you do, the invisible world opens before you, quietly, faithfully, and perfectly timed. And if this message awakened something in you, subscribe to the channel, turn on the notifications, and stay close. Every week we explore the hidden laws that shape your reality, so you can learn to live not by chance, but by divine assumption.